So welcome to HOMT 611 Events Management. This is our second session. And in today's session, we will be looking at creating and designing events. As usual, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session. And these are as follows. First, by the end of the session, you'll be able to understand the process of idea generation, because every single event that we see being created and designed and implemented now starts from just the seed of an idea. So we will understand the process of idea generation. And then by the end of the session, you will also be able to describe the process of creating and designing an event and develop key outcome appraisal tools to be able to ensure that these designs that you come up with meet the criteria for an event that can actually be implemented in practice. And then finally, you will be able to understand the basis of stakeholder relationships. Stakeholders play a key role in the management of events, right from the idea generation stage all the way through creating and designing it and executing it. So we will be able to understand the basis of stakeholder relationships and develop approaches to build alignment around shared aspirations between the various stakeholders of the events that we organize in practice. So these are the learning outcomes that we hope to achieve by the end of the session, right? So let's get into the lecture, starting from idea generation. Now, like I said, every single event that we see being implemented and executed now starts from the seed of an idea. So when we talk about idea generation, what is it? We are saying idea generation because idea generation, like I said, is the seed that beds the events that we have and see executed around us on a daily basis. Without an idea, there is nothing to carry through to the creation and designing stage where you expound upon the initial concepts created at the idea stage to be able to come up with the full-fledged events that you can stage for people to participate in. So Yeoman et al. 2004 notes that the idea for an event can be generated by different people and through different circumstances. They note that, first of all, ideas can be generated by the event professional. So in this case, it's about you, the event manager, you, the event professional, coming up with an idea that you think can be expanded into a full-fledged event that can be staged. However, apart from the event professional, ideas can also come from external catalysts. So certain catalysts that are external to you, the event professional, including certain institutions and organizations and occurrences in your environment, including the public sector. So for instance, we remember the year of return. Who remembers the year of return?
We do, madam.
What year was the year of return?
2019 December.
No, what year was it?
2019.
2019, good. Now that was an external catalyst from the public sector, right? Being the government, which spurred a lot of events that were organized within that year. So you realize that several events were organized in terms of concerts, excursions, tours, trips, parties, all of them centered around the idea of expatriates returning home to their roots. You remember?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes,
Good. That is a typical example of an external catalyst that can spearhead idea generation in terms of creating events. We can also talk about private sector institutions and individuals who also come up with certain ideas for events that they think can be put on and organized for various purposes. For instance, in the private sector, we have various organizations that are engaged in different businesses. Now, depending on the objectives that they want to achieve, they would want to organize an event to be able to sensitize their audiences and achieve the set objectives that they have for that particular audience. So for instance, ECG Ghana may decide that they want to educate Ghanaians on power consumption and how to conserve energy. They can decide to organize an event centered around power consumption and energy conservation, right? That is an idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
A private company, depending on their business, for instance, is expecting some investors from abroad, say investors from China and Europe. And to be able to ensure that the investors feel welcome, they want to put on an event that will be able to showcase Ghanaian culture to the investors and let them feel at home once they arrive in Ghana. Is that not an idea?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Good. Let's also talk about the voluntary sector. We have certain organizations in the voluntary sector, particularly NGOs, like the United Nations organizations, the World Health Organization. We have the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization. These are all organizations in the voluntary sector in the form of NGOs who put up various events for various reasons. So for instance, the World Health Organization can decide that they want to put up an event to sensitize people on the spread of tuberculosis, right? Or the spread of malaria, which is still killing people, by the way, right? So this is an idea that can spearhead the creation of a whole event. So these are the potential sources where ideas can come from. And the ideas can take the following forms. We can have an idea that comes in the form of an original idea, being something new that does not already exist, that nobody has done before, or something new that will complement upon something that exists. So we know that usually when they are having malaria, what do they call it? Events that are centered around malaria education, they usually go to the communities with their flip charts and talk to the community members, the fathers, the mothers about using mosquito nets and stuff, isn't it?
Yes.
What if you come up with a different idea where this time it's not just about going to educate them, but then you decide to have a whole party where people are supposed to come dressed up as mosquitoes? That's funny, isn't it? But it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it is a new way that will complement the old way of doing the malaria education. So come dressed as a mosquito. And then you have different games at the event. Like for instance, a competition around who knows the most facts about malaria in Africa. Or who knows the most facts about how malaria is spread, how malaria is prevented. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Good. These are new ways of building upon or complementing existing events. And this will make it exciting and be different from the original boring one where they only carry the flip chart to the community and they go and talk about malaria and do this and do that. And this time you have found an interesting way of getting the people actively involved in the events.
Yeah.
And that is the first form of idea generation, which is an original idea, right? The next, we can talk about a specific request or commission. And ideas usually come by this means where you are responding to a prescribed brief to deliver a set event with a given team at a particular time. So this typically happens in corporations and organizations where your boss calls you. I think this is some of what Harriet does on a regular basis. Your boss calls you and tells you that, okay, this is the brief. We are supposed to have this event on this particular day. And we want you to be able to design something nice for the people to participate in. This is the time that the event is supposed to be, and this is the theme that we are looking at. So go ahead and plan it. That is a typical example of a specific request or commission, because the person is telling you to do a particular thing based on a particular theme at a particular time. And this is the most common form of event organizing that we have in Ghana here. Do you know that?
Yes.
Yes. So if you're an event organizer or an event management company, people will usually come to you with a request. Organize my wedding for me, or organize my this funeral for me, or organize this naming ceremony, organize this concert for me. That's the main form of event management we see in Ghana here. There's very limited aspect of the original idea generation. It doesn't happen that often. And that is more of what I want to push you people to do in this course. To come up with original ideas, because the old events are becoming boring. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same thing over and over and over because we have the same events people who are not evolved, who have not gone through MSc Hospitality and Tourism to know that there's a whole other part of event management that is not just about responding to people's requests and commissions, but it's also about coming up with original ideas for original events that can sell and be commercialized. So that is the second type of idea generation that we have. Then the third type is regular calendar events that need a fresh approach, right? So here you see the event manager taking on the delivery of a regular festival or a regular party or a regular occasion, but refreshing it, right? And adding something new to it or adding a new twist to it. For instance, we had been celebrating Christmas in Ghana for a very long time, the same way. 24th, 25th, people go around and have fun. But then one year, someone came up with an original idea to create something around Christmas called December to Remember. Do you know of December to Remember?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
CTFM.
CTFM December to Remember. Thank you. And it became huge because around that time, people didn't have anything doing during Christmas.
Yeah.
It was just about visiting family, cooking, eating, and hanging around at home. So when they did December to Remember, it became big because all of a sudden, everybody had something to do at that time of the year. And it became so big that subsequent years, the tickets even sell out weeks before the event itself.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is the power of an original idea. And it was just centered around coming together at Christmas time to have fun. And there was a theme, which we will learn about very soon, the importance of themes. There was a theme and people were so excited about the whole theme and concept of the thing that they just jumped on the bandwagon and it became something big. So these are typical examples of how you can generate ideas. And you realize that in this particular December to Remember example, there was a combination of an original idea and a regular calendar event, isn't it?
Yes.
So what was the original idea?
Christmas.
No.
The
December to
idea.
Remember.
Good. The December to Remember, the concept that they were having. Good.
Yeah.
And then the calendar event was what?
Was a Christmas.
Was a Christmas. Good.
Yeah.
Right? And in other parts of the world, they have started combining the original ideas with the specific request or commission. So for instance, we have weddings that are built around themes. So someone's wedding can be designed to be like a Hollywood movie. I recently saw one that was done in the UK and the whole wedding was designed around James Bond and 007. So the bridal entrance was the bride came in with people who had captured her. And the husband was James Bond. And with his groomsmen being his bodyguard who came to rescue her. And this was all the wedding.
Wow.
So instead of the regular walk down the aisle, here comes the bride or dressed in white, no, they didn't do that. In the beginning, the people were sitting down, all of a sudden they heard gunshots. What's happening? The bride has been captured. The bride has been captured. Who's going to save her? And the groom came with his groomsmen, with their all dressed in their suit and tie, like the way James Bond dresses. And they also had their guns ready to free the bride. And then they fired gunshots, they killed all the armed people, and then they freed the bride. And the groom took her to the altar and they said their vows. Now, this is an idea. This is a fresh take on a boring event like weddings that we attend that is one way all the time. One way. They made it fun. Do you get where I'm coming from? So it's about, as an event manager, being creative and selling interesting things that your audiences will jump at and be excited about. And that's what the whole idea generation process is about. So the more creative your ideas are, the more you see a combination of these forms of idea generation being used. So we realize that the James Bond wedding example I just gave is a combination of what? What is it a combination of?
Original and regular.
Idea and a regular.
Okay, so what is the original idea here?
The
The James Bond.
Good. And then And then the specific request or commission.
Wedding reception, wedding ceremony.
Wedding ceremony, good, right? So now you've understood the concept of idea generation. It's not enough to just come up with an original idea, or it's not enough to just respond to a request or organize a regular calendar event. It's about combinations of these to make it interesting and unique and to grab the attention of your audiences. So now that we appreciate the concept of idea generation, let's look at a typical example. You remember the Chalewote Street Festival?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So the Chalewote Street Festival came about as a result of something similar, right? There was a lot of artists in Ghana here who were doing all manner of things, but there was no visibility for them. So someone came up with the original idea of, okay, you used to commission galleries to be able to host our events, right? So that's a regular event that you can organize. But why not put a twist to it? Instead of putting the paintings in frames and putting it in a gallery for people to watch, why not move the galleries to the streets and do the paintings on the walls and do the paintings on human beings to walk around and be walking art? So the Chalewote Street Festival is a typical example of idea generation that came about as a result of applying two forms. Which two forms are here? Here we can see, yeah, go ahead.
Moving to the streets.
So moving to the streets is what?
It's an original idea.
Good. And then what else?
And specific events.
A specific request, good. Because artists were exhibiting their items in galleries, good. So that's the specific request, but let's put a twist on it and move it to the streets. So that's how the Chalewote Street Art Festival was born. And it became huge.
Yes.
But for COVID, yeah, the things it has done. But for COVID, right?
Yeah.
So this is another typical example of how idea generation can be commercialized and become huge. And these are all the work of astute event managers such as yourselves. So it is not limited to the organizing of big events. You can even apply it in your small organization where you're working to bring in fresh business, right? Because you know organizations in the hospitality and tourism industry have seasonal periods. So there are times when business is booming and there are times when business is not. True or false?
Yes, true.
Yeah. There are times when your premises has a lot of visitors and a lot of traffic. And there are times too when the place is very dry.
Yeah.
So during those dry spells, that is your opportunity to come up with all these innovative, creative ideas. What can we do during this period to raise some kind of revenue? And it starts with idea generation. Because you're thinking, what can we commercialize? What new spin can we put on an old idea to create something unique, right? So that is it for idea generation. Now, once you have done idea generation, you have a basic idea that you're working with. So with that, you move on to the next stage, which is the creating and design process. And here it is very important because the idea that you have is just a seed. Now you have to blow it up and grow it into specifics of how the whole event is going to play out and how it is going to be executed. So here we talk about the fact that the event creating and designing process is of necessity, because without the design and creating process, you can't be able to expand this small idea you have into the full-fledged events that you want to execute. The process is also said to be fluid and iterative. Fluid in the sense that you keep moving back and forth, because if you move from one stage to the other and you realize that things will not work out, you have to go back to the drawing board and redesign. So hence the iteration. When we say something is iterative, it means you go back and forth a lot until you're able to perfect it. So this origination and creation and design is fluid and iterative in the sense that the event originator goes through various stages back and forth to be able to test the ideas that they have generated, the various motives and approaches with which they can use to create this whole event built around this idea that they can be able to turn into a concept which they can sell to specific stakeholders, because you know that every event has stakeholders, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Good. So you need to have people who will be able to support you to get the event done. In the event that you do not have resources to finance it, you need to be able to get stakeholders who will actually fund the event, and so on and so forth. So this process is necessary for you to be able to come out with a design concept that is built around this initial idea that you had, to explain to stakeholders of how the event is going to play out, all the different moving parts and how they will come together. And to be able to do this, there are two main lenses that you have to look through. The first one is the creative lens, and the second one is the design lens. So we'll take them one after the other and we will break them down, starting from the creative lens. So when we say the creative lens, what are we talking about? We are talking about the fact that the best creations are compounds of ideas rather than single elements. So the fact that you came up with one idea does not mean that idea is perfect and can be blown up into a whole event. That is why the creative lens is necessary, for you to be able to get all manner of creative input to change this idea into a form that can be blown up into a proper event. And because of that, we say a claim of sole ownership is as unhelpful in event creation as it is untrue. Because you realize that one person alone cannot sit down and come up with all the necessary tweaks and aspects of the idea in order to turn it into that big event. So if you go to City now and you ask them, okay, so the December to remember, how did you come up with it? They'll not be able to tell you one person who came up with it. You know that?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they sat down around the table and one person said, okay, why don't we build something around Christmas? Then somebody will come in and say, okay, yeah, can we do something along the lines of December to remember, or December to not forget? Then someone will come in and say, I think December to remember is better. Great. Okay, so what do we do about it? What can we do to make it unique? These are all aspects of the idea generation process. And it is almost rarely never done by one person. That is why we say that you cannot claim sole ownership to an idea. So you may have the original idea, but as the originator, you have to be prepared to cede power. Power in the sense that the idea is a shared experience between you and your stakeholders. So you realize that even when you have perfected all the specifics of your idea, a stakeholder can come in and say, okay, before I offer my support, I think you should change the idea in this way and that way. You know that is possible?
Yes.
Good. It's like a bank giving you a loan to start a business. Because there are stakeholders in the business, when they look at your business plan, they can tell you that, okay, we think if you do this way, it will not work. So can you change it and do this and do that? All of that form part of the creative lens, because you are all putting your ideas together to make sure that whatever idea you end up with that you're going to turn into this event is solid. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, please.
Good.
Please.
All right. So whatever and wherever the impetus or catalyst for this event that you have is, the process of creating the event will always include a response to a range of key factors, because you realize that the event will not occur in isolation. So even as people are chipping in their 2 cents about the idea and how it has to be designed and developed and executed, you need to be able to look at these factors that can influence how the event will play out. And based on these factors, you have to view and test and develop the event such that it can withstand the effect of these factors, whether positive or negative. And because of that, you have to take the idea that you have through the process of the creative lens, which involves 3 key elements. The first one being the purpose, the second one being the success factors, and then the third one being the concept testing stage. So we'll take each of these one after the other and break them down, starting from the purpose. Now, what is the purpose about? It is the rationale for the event. So basically, you're asking yourself, why are we organizing this event? And this purpose should be clear, concise, and written down. And to be able to do this, some people will even go as far as to create a mission and vision statement to be able to clearly articulate the rationale for why they are organizing the event. And some of them will boldly stipulate it in the marketing and promotion of the event to let people know that they didn't just get up and come up with the event, but there was a specific mission and vision in mind, like what we have seen with the Chalewote Street Art Festival. They had a mission to showcase the work of various artists and to take the traditional art out of the gallery and bring it into the streets. So that is the main rationale for their event, and it is clearly stated in all their promotion and marketing communications. Now, the actual description of purpose can be quite succinct, meaning that some organizers of events can make it very straightforward and very simple. Like, for instance, the purpose of a particular event could be to raise the profile of local arts and artists. Simple. So whatever they are doing in the event is to give local arts and artists the spotlight for them to shine and show their work. However, the purpose could also be structured and have various sub-levels of objectives which the event is intended to achieve. Now, articulating the purpose provides a starting point from the development of your ideas and the central pivot for testing viability. Because when you look at the purpose for which you are organizing the event, you ask yourself, is it a strong enough purpose to make people interested? And if you realize that people are not interested, it will immediately let you understand that that event perhaps will not be viable. Because the viability of an event is limited to how much interested people are and whether or not, if you commercialize it, they'll be willing to exchange money for it. So it is very important for you to clearly articulate your purpose so that you can be able to determine whether this purpose is something that you can get audience to buy in and get them on board to participate to make it a success. So once you have been able to clearly state your purpose, as in the examples we saw with the Chalewote Arts Festival and the December to Remember, which were clearly, first of all, to showcase the art of various artists and take them out of the galleries and put it onto the streets. And for December to Remember, it was basically about having a huge Christmas party, which at that time was non-existent in Ghana. And once your purpose is clear, like we have for these two events, the next thing you want to look at is the success factors. What are the factors that have to be present for the event to be successful? So essentially, you're asking yourself, what are the outcomes or the key elements that will bring us the expected benefits that we are looking for? What are the factors that have to be present for us to be able to tell ourselves, job well done by the end of the event? So once you ask yourself this question, you are forced to start thinking, okay, what are the different things that have to be put in place in order for this idea that we have generated and the purpose that it is supposed to achieve to result in success, right? And here, success factors can take a number of forms, starting from micro-level success factors. And when we talk about micro-level success factors, we are talking about success factors that focus on the profile of a location. So perhaps you are organizing the event to create awareness of a venue. So for instance, Kasim works at the University Guest Center. The University Guest Center perhaps for some time has not been having a lot of publicity. And people sometimes forget that the University Guest Center is still there serving guests, serving lunch, serving breakfast and supper. So they'll just want to organize this event to increase the awareness of the University Guest Center for people to know that they are there and they can come there and patronize all manner of services. That is a typical example. Another micro-level success factor could be to increase the awareness of a particular occasion or tradition, or some socio-cultural value, like the way the Depot Festival is organized consistently every year. The Homowa Festival is organized consistently every year. These are all events that are supposed to focus on increasing awareness of traditions and socio-cultural values. True or false?
True.
True.
So do you know what tradition the Homowa Festival is supposed to highlight?
I think it's supposed to shame hunger.
Good.
Yeah, hooting at hunger.
Good. Right? And it's been a tradition of the Ga people for several decades. What about the Dipo Festival? That's socio-cultural value, isn't it?
The motive is for young girls to be initiated into proper womanhood in code.
Yeah.
Good.
Before they actually reach the level at where they can practice, they can be or whatever.
Good. Right? So these are all micro-level success factors that can be used to measure all these different events that we are talking about because of their purpose. Now we can go a step further and look at more of macro-level success factors, which are more broad, and they focus on profile raising on a national or international level for perhaps a city or a region or a country. Remember, we talked about types of events last week. What are the types of events that we talked about? Examples.
The Rio de Janeiro from in Rio.
We talked about types of events. We categorize them based on type. Do you remember?
Yeah.
The convention, exhibition.
Those are the specific examples that we talked about, the categorization of events. Do you remember we talked about mega events?
Sizes.
Mega events like the Olympic World Cup.
Good. Which other one?
Minor events like Ashaman Fest.
Good. Then we also talked about
and we talked about the based on type to typology or plan event.
Good. So looking at macro level success factors, right? We could focus on profile raising on a national or international level for a city, a region, or a country. Which events can help us achieve national level profile raising objectives?
The Cannes 2000.
Which is an example of a what? Of the types of events we just mentioned. The Cannes 2008 is an example of what event? Mega. Good. So a mega event of that nature raised the profile of Ghana, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Because Ghana became very popular at that time. Everybody wanted to come to Ghana to watch the matches.
Even the December to remember, we're talking about them, they were coming to Ghana. Plenty of them are stars, celebrities were coming down.
Exactly. Right? So it raised the profile of the country. And currently Tokyo is...
How about the year of return?
Year of return, another one. It raised our profile nationally and internationally. Right now, all of the superstars in the United States of America know the name of Ghana. Some of them are even planning on moving to Ghana to invest.
Some found their hometowns and their ancestors.
Some of them have opened businesses. Right? So these are typical examples of macro level success factors that we need to look at in terms of creating events. Because the larger the number of success factors, the greater the possibility that the event will become a success. Still on the forms of success factors, we can also talk about other success factors, including perhaps reaching a specific kind of participants or delegates, right? Or demographic targets. In Ghana here, we've had several events that have been targeted at specific demographics that have been successful over the years. A very successful one I remember that was targeted at children, which ran for so many years in Ghana here was what? Who remembers? They used to organize it at National Theatre.
Oh,
It was targeted
Is it
at kids.
Kidnapping?
Kidafest.
Yeah.
Kidafest was popular for so long, so many years, and attracted so many people. Right? And it was targeted at children. There's another very popular event now that is targeted at young single people. It's popular for all the wrong reasons.
Single.
It's actually a television.
Single people. Is it date rash?
Date rash.
Date rash.
It's popular for all the wrong reasons, but people really like it.
Yeah.
But that one is because of social media. When you decide not to even watch it, and you go on Facebook or Instagram anywhere, they'll be talking about it. Oh, Fatima this, Fatima, and then you will be forced to go and watch. Why are people? So social media is making it bigger.
Good. So you realize that technology plays a key role when it comes to events, especially social media. And we have a whole lecture dedicated to the role of technology in events. So when we get there, we will talk more about the impact of technologies in our current dispensation, like social media, and how they are pushing events to the next level. Right?
Yeah.
Because currently, in the era of COVID, technology is what is driving a lot of events. You know that?
Yes, yes,
Good.
yes.
So
we can even have events online.
Exactly. Right? So that is it for other success factors. We can also talk about quantitative targets. Some people organize events because of the money that they want to make out of it. So you realize that a lot of the award shows in Ghana here have been accused of being quantitative. They don't care about the quality of the event. They just care about how much money that they can make. So the organizers are always being accused of rigging their awards.
Yeah. Yes.
The most recent one that they said was rigged in Ghana here was which one?
VGMA.
VGMAs. They are always being accused of being quantitative, that they are selling awards to people. People don't deserve awards that they are getting. Right? And that is because perhaps organizers of these events have a certain break-even point in mind. So, for instance, if they are organizing the event, they are looking at the number of tickets that they will sell. They are looking at perhaps the number of VIP tickets, standard tickets, deluxe tickets. So it's all about the bottom line.
Money.
When they are premiering a movie, they are organizing a huge premiere at Accra International Conference Center. It's about the bottom line. How many tickets are they selling? Right? For others too, it may not necessarily be quantitative, but it will be qualitative. So it's not about money, but they want to create some kind of experience. They want to create some kind of awareness. So if it is an HIV/AIDS event, it's about how many people they were able to get to attend, and then perhaps how many people they were able to get to learn about how the disease is spread. Is that how that makes sense?
Yes.
Good. So those are typical examples of qualitative success factors. Here, it's not about the money, but it's more about the impact of the event on a certain number of people or audience members. So these are the various forms of success factors. So when you are designing your event, you need to think about what success factors you hope to achieve. Are you looking at micro level success factors, macro level, other success factors, quantitative targets, or qualitative targets? You have to make this very clear once you determine the purpose of your event. And once you do that, you have been able to clearly determine a purpose, clearly outline your success factors. Now it's about testing your concept. And testing the concept involves asking yourself the question, is this idea fit for purpose? And here it's about, okay, me and my small team have been working on this idea for a long time. So can we look at asking other people who are independent of this idea generation process to find out what their views are, for them to give us feedback on how they think we can be able to execute this idea, or whether or not they think the idea that we have is even feasible at all, and how they feel they can contribute to help the idea become better. So here, by the time you are going through this process, you are going through what we refer to as concept testing. So you are asking different people, particularly stakeholders of the event. So if you want to have an event that is built around a particular demographic, for instance, this is the time to find people within that demographic, if it is an age demographic or a gender demographic, to ask them, okay, we are planning this event for people like you in your age bracket or in this neighborhood. Would you attend? If yes, what will make you want to attend? If no, why? If yes, will you be willing to pay money for it? How much money will you be willing to pay for such an event? And how much money is it that if it's charged, you will not show up? Please, am I making sense?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes,
so by the time you finish going through this process, you will be able to critically assess your idea to be able to see areas where it is found lacking. And if it is found lacking in so many areas, you will have to perhaps go back to the drawing board to make sure that those areas where it is lacking are beefed up or amplified so that you do not end up wasting resources on an idea that is doomed to fail from the beginning. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So you have to make sure that you test your concept before you invest any significant resources in it, so that you will be able to ensure that the money that you are investing is actually going into something that is to a large extent going to succeed based on the little research you have done and the testing that you have done with specific stakeholder groups who have a direct stake in the event. Please, do we all understand?
Yes, please.
Still on the issue of concept testing, you also need to look at whether or not you can be able to deliver this event. Because the idea may be a good idea. But when you look at how you are going to execute it, is it possible that you may not be able to execute it the way you are conceptualizing it based on certain environmental factors? Like, for instance, people have had a lot of brilliant ideas for events in Ghana. But in the event that the purpose for the event contravenes the laws of Ghana, will you be able to go ahead and do it?
No.
Even though when you tested it, people were happy about it, they were interested, they said they'll participate. If it goes against the law, you will not be able to deliver it, will you?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Harriet, please go ahead, your hand is up.
It was a question I wanted to ask earlier, like first when you brought up the original idea.
Yeah.
Institutions like mine, that things are decided up there.
Good.
When you say you want to bring up an original idea,
Yeah.
dog, trust me, it's going to, like, it's a whole lot.
Exactly.
It will even take years before it can mature.
Exactly.
So if you have an idea, something might in a way, like along the line, kill it. Or
Exactly.
yes, it's like you are changing the whole tradition or something. So
good.
So, Madam, I think with this one, it's similar to policy process or policy formulation.
Yeah.
And in policy formulation, it travels. There are we call something windows of opportunity.
Good.
If and then there are hidden participants in policy process.
Who are
so
the
there are
stakeholders?
who are the bigger stakeholders.
Good.
So if it is not going to be in their interest, like is it Jifa? I'm not sure whether it's Jifa or Elom who's.
I think it was Harriet. Harriet. Yeah.
Like Harriet said, so if it is not going to favor the big stakeholders who are mostly hidden participants, they don't show their faces, it will not go through, or it won't shine. Exactly. However, if it is going to benefit them, they will give you the window of opportunity so that it shines.
Good.
So I think it's similar to a policy process.
Exactly. So you remember in the beginning, we said that the process is iterative. You keep going back and forth. So when you hit a roadblock and you find out that the stakeholders are not happy about something, you need to go back to the drawing board and tweak it such that it will be aligned to what the hidden stakeholders are looking for. Otherwise, like Harriet said, it will not go anywhere. And sometimes they may not be for the idea, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because it didn't come from them.
Yes.
So, Madam, I think that this is where negotiating skills of an event planner also count.
Yeah.
You need to be able to negotiate with them and lobby. You need to lobby with the power holders.
Exactly.
Behind the scenes. And then let them know what their benefit will be.
Good.
I think this may be important when you are organizing, for example, a national event or something that has to go to national powers.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Kasim.
You're welcome, madam.
Right? So these are all things that will affect the deliverability of your event. At the same time, too, in the event that the stakeholders are okay and everything goes through, you also need to ask yourself, are there any other events that are very similar or exactly like the one that we are trying to organize that can compete with our event in time or space? So you realize that with events like the Chalewote Street Art Festival, there was nothing like it in Ghana at the time that that event started. So it took off and was an instant success. December to Remember, at that time around December, there was nothing going on except for this particular event that took place. Was it the Girl Talk concert?
Girl Talk.
And even that, because it was limited to females, the males felt left out. But December to Remember came in and it was open to everybody. And it was a fun event that anybody could participate in regardless of where you're coming from.
Dog,
So,
even,
yes.
Sorry to chip in, even the Girl Talk was on the 23rd.
Good. Right?
Straight to 24th.
Good.
Yes.
So the positioning of the events on the 24th alone made it strategic because it is Christmas Eve. And everybody at that time was having some kind of merrymaking. So it was strategically positioned. So even though Girl Talk was on 23rd, it could not compete with December to Remember. Because the themes were different, the stakeholders were different, and the times at which they were being organized were totally different. And the spaces were different. Girl Talk at that time was a national theater. They took December to Remember to where?
Yeah.
No.
The December to Remember was at National Theater.
Right? So you need to look at the competing events and make sure that there's no events that can be remotely comparable to what you are doing. Otherwise, you will spend all your time trying to combat your competition.
Yes.
That is why you have to spend time to make sure that the idea that you have is solid and you have the buy-in of all the probable stakeholders whose decisions and actions can affect its success and deliverability. Right? So that is it for concept testing. So by the time you finish establishing your purpose, the success factors, and then you test your concept, you end up with what? A solid theme. So in this case, by the time they finished everything that they were doing with the street artists, they came up with the theme, the Chalewote Street Arts Festival. And by the time City finished all their back and forth and their decision making, they ended up with what they referred to as December to Remember. Now the theme is the main selling point of the event. So immediately you mention the theme of the event, the audience or the target market get excited. Do you remember Ghana versus Niger?
Yeah.
Hey, people took it personal.
Yes.
Because the theme alone suggested some level of competitiveness. And competitiveness always creates some kind of adrenaline rush, which gets people excited. So the theme is very important because it is the main selling point of the event that can either make or unmake your event. So now that you have a theme, let's talk about the various ways in which people come up with themes, right? Now, the originator of an idea can be the one to come up with the theme. But once again, you need to be able to test the concept of this theme with other stakeholders to ensure that it is clear and robust enough to take on to the design stage. Because like I said, the theme is the main selling point of your event. So if you are able to go through the stages of the creative lens accurately and effectively, such that you can come up with a strong theme that is confirmed and accepted in confidence by all stakeholders, you can be able to have a viable proposition that you will carry to the design stage to design how the entire event is going to play out. Now, themes are a great way for attendees to get involved and have fun participating. Like I said, Ghana versus Niger was a successful event because the theme connoted some level of competition and fun, such that people wanted to participate. If you saw people who were going for Ghana versus Niger prior to the event, you will see the smack talk happening in the background. You remember, they'll be talking about the artists who are performing, who is going to sing better, who is going to perform better, who is going to win. Is it Ghana or Niger? And even on the day of the event, you see that people sometimes go there dressed in their national colors. People have Ghana flags, people have Nigerian flags. They are ready to cheer their countrymen on. And it becomes a whole fun participatory activity. The same for December to remember. People go there because they are ready to dance and have fun and remember that holiday, that Christmas Eve, till the next year. And when you have a fun theme like that, it creates plenty of photo opportunities. Like I said, look at December to remember. What is the theme? What's the theme in terms of dress code?
White top with blue.
White top with blue jeans. So when you see pictures of that event, everybody is wearing some kind of white top and blue jeans, and it creates beautiful pictures. The pictures are always lovely. The same for the Ghana versus Niger. You see the green and white flags, the red, gold, green, people doing all the fun activities at the event to participate, hailing their countrymen while they perform. All of these create plenty of beautiful photo opportunities that create lasting memories. And these memories set the tone for future events. Because depending on how well the previous event was organized, which can be observed through the pictures from the event and the video from the event, people will subsequently want to participate. True or false?
True.
Good.
True.
So it creates a buzz because people will say, the last December to remember, the performances, the dancing, you have no idea, you missed though if you were not there. So this buzz will even make people who didn't participate this time around look forward to participating the next time the event comes around in the calendar year. So the theme is very, very important. And like I said, there are so many crazy themes that you can come up with. I mentioned earlier the wedding that was based on James Bond's 007 theme, right? People have also based their events on Academy Award winning movies. So like I said, 007, James Bond. What are some of your favorite movies? Currently in Ghana here, I've seen birthday parties based on Avengers. Mainly children's birthday parties.
Yeah.
Based on Avengers.
Paw Patrol.
Good, right? Based on Sophia the First, Cinderella.
And Frozen.
Right?
Frozen.
Frozen, good. These are all themes that people come up with. Some people too will organize events and themes based around a particular era. So they can decide that a particular party will be based on 80s era. So that means that everybody should come dressed like they are from the 80s.
80s, yeah.
Yes. We had one at the office. We were celebrating ECG at 60. So everybody, we had it was a whole day dedicated that we all dressed in like how we were in the 80s.
Good.
So old school.
Good.
Even the MD was an old school.
Good. And it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
For plenty people.
Exactly. So office parties, KPMG last 2 years had this party that was based on the 20s for their end of year party. And it was phenomenal.
Wow.
All the staff were dressed like they were from the 20s.
Yes.
These are all interesting things you can come up with to spice up old events, right?
Yeah.
People
Yes.
to build a theme around a vacation escape. So they will have an event that is built around the beach. So you are not going to the beach, but you dress like you are going to the beach to the event. And the closest thing you can come to water in that event is perhaps a small pool. But you have to dress like you're going to the beach. So you see people in bikinis and kimonos. And there are a lot of parties in Ghana now with that particular theme.
Wow.
Yeah. And then this one too is very popular in our schools. You see that they have events that are built around countries of the world or capitals of the world. So they'll share the countries for the different classes, and then you have to dress like people from a particular country.
Yes.
So some people will dress like Indians, some people will dress like Americans, some people will dress like Chinese, right?
Kenyans.
Kenyans, thank you. Right? And they are fun for the kids all the time. These
That's
are
how
events.
that's how they brought about I think that's how it brought about the career day for children.
Good.
Then they will, like how they want to be in future.
Good. These are all events on the school calendar that children look forward to. You know that?
Yes.
And parents actually plan ahead, because if you wait until the last minute, you will not find a costume for your child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So these are all unique themes that events are built around. Sometimes too, some events are built around childhood memories. So you realize that they'll do old school reunion, and then they would want to wear their school uniform. And funny enough, people's uniforms still fit after 10, 15 years. When I see them talk, I'm like, hey, so you didn't eat all these years. You didn't grow big. You put on weight. Some people's uniforms still fit them. Right? And these are all childhood memories, and they reminisce and they have fun at the event by remembering how they were in school. These are all themes. Some parties too are built around color. This one is very common. So someone will have their maybe 50th birthday, then they'll say it's an all-white party. Everybody should wear white.
Yes.
They'll have a wedding and they'll say, okay, apart from the bride, nobody should wear white. Everybody should wear red or pink. The theme of the event could also be based around food. So you can decide that, okay, we are having a local Ghanaian party. So no fried rice or chicken, no jollof, only local food.
So, Madam.
Yes, Kasim.
With even the coloration example you are giving,
yes.
I also understand that even it becomes necessary depending on context, which geographical location is the event taking place.
Exactly.
Which group of people is it being organized within?
Exactly.
So, for example, the Chinese, just as we love white color, we see it as good luck. They see it as not good luck.
Yes, for them it's red.
So when you are organizing an event, for example, and it's outside your jurisdiction, then it might be necessary to have an idea what the population do not take for seriousness. Identify what is not.
Again to stakeholder management. It seems Kasim is very into the stakeholder thing, yeah, so getting to the end of the lecture, we will discuss how to break down stakeholders and their importance. So like you are saying, if we are having an event and we are expecting a whole delegation from the Chinese consulate, we know they are a very powerful stakeholder in that event. So we do not want to do anything to upset them. So like Kasim is saying, we will not go and make it a white party. They will all decide not to attend. Right, Kasim?
Yeah.
Yes, madam.
But if it is a red party, they'll be more than excited to attend. In fact, they'll bring gifts, because around their celebrations, especially during Chinese New Year and during marriages, they give out red envelopes with money. So the color red is very important to them, right? Just like the Indians also see white as a mourning color and red as a celebratory color. So they, instead of wearing a white wedding dress, they will wear a red wedding dress. So color is very important. Thank you for that contribution, Kasim.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah. So like I was talking about the cuisine, we can decide to build it around this particular kind of cuisine. And this one, we can see that the hotels in Ghana have done it very well. They have different themed cuisine events for different days of the week. So Fiesta Royale has this seafood event they do on Wednesday nights. Who knows about it? You don't know about Fiesta Royale Seafood Wednesday?
I don't know.
Okay, so Fiesta Royale has a seafood grill event on Wednesday where they sell all kinds of seafood, shrimp, lobster, fish, everything, all seafood dishes on Wednesdays.
Even now, madam.
I don't know if they are still doing it post-COVID.
I would have gone there.
Yeah. Hey, Harriet, your mouth suits you.
Hey, Harriet.
Harriet, your mouth suits you.
No, it's just research. No, don't do that. If I get to know about this, maybe there will be an event happening in at my office, and then I'll ask them to
but
come.
I think you should call them and find out. Perhaps they still do it.
I was actually going to say that because I love seafood. So
so they actually build the whole menu around seafood. So they serve only wine that tastes good with seafood. So it's a whole seafood event. Then Holiday Inn too has the local Sunday.
Sunday, yes, from
all local food from all parts of the country, from Ateke to you name it, they have it on that Sunday. The buffet is huge. Good. That's an example of a cuisine themed event. Then we have events that are themed around brands. And these ones are usually done to be able to promote specific brands. So they can have a Coca-Cola event and expect everyone to come dressed in Coca-Cola colors. The only drink they will serve there are Coca-Cola drinks. You won't see any other drink from any other company there, among others, right? So these are just a few of the themes. Like we mentioned at the idea generation stage, the possibilities are limitless. You just have to be creative in terms of what you can come up with, right? And these are all typical examples of event themes that can be had in addition to the ones that we have just discussed, right? Okay. So once you are able to now create the event and you have your theme, you now have to design the event. And this is where we go through the design lens. Now, with the design lens, we are looking at whatever the nature of the event is, right? And the elements that must be designed to fit in with the theme. So if we say we are doing a seafood themed event, we need to look at all the elements that have to be present for it to be a seafood themed event. Obviously, the most basic thing is that the only thing that has to be served on the menu is what?
Seafood.
But among other things, we need to look at, okay, what other things go with seafood? Because seafood cannot be eaten alone. So are we adding rice? Are we adding couscous? Are we adding yam? Are we adding bread? Fried yam. Are we adding soup? Right? What kind of beverages will we serve? There are certain wines that go well with seafood, some that don't. So what wines will we serve? All these things are various elements that play into the success of the theme. So the design, let's consider the precise form and format of the event that will enable the purpose and objectives that we had at the beginning to be delivered. And once we are able to get the specific elements right, we will be able to reach our target audiences. Because for those who like seafood, if you say you're organizing a seafood event, when they come there, there are certain kinds of seafood they want to see. There are certain kind of side dishes that they want to see, certain kind of drinks that they want to see. So to make your event stand out amongst the array of alternative options that are there for this particular audience, you need to make sure that all the elements that are true to your theme are present. And the design lens provides a series of key filters that will support our journey towards creating these elements that will help us on our journey from getting our creative idea to having a concrete event that we can stage, right? So here with the design list, we start from the review of our stakeholders, which is Kasim's favorite. So when we talk about stakeholder review, what are we talking about? We are talking about the key relationships that will impact our event. So like Kasim was saying, we need to look at who these people are, where they will be coming from, what are their interests in the event. In this case, from the word stakeholder, we say what are their stakes in the event. And because they have different stakes, stakes here can mean influence, stakes can mean contributions, stakes can mean impact. Now, depending on the impact or the contribution or the leverage that they have with regard to the event, they will wield a certain amount of power when it comes to the success or otherwise of the event. So for instance, if you have a whole stakeholder that is paying for the entire event, and the person who is just organizing the logistics of the event, of these two people, who is more powerful?
The one funding.
The one funding. Because you can organize your logistics and whatever, but if the funding doesn't come, there's no event. Following from Kasim's example, we are expecting a delegation from the Chinese consulate, and they are giving us a significant amount of resources to pay for this event. Then we decide that we are going to make the theme of the event a white party. Are we asking for trouble? Are we asking for trouble, yes or no?
Yes, we are.
Why?
Because we know they don't like white, and then we are bringing in white. It's like we are throwing it in their face. It's an insult.
But if they don't like white, why should we care? In this
Because
case,
they are funding.
Because they are the ones
Thank
who
you. Thank you. So that makes them a key stakeholder. Therefore, the stakeholder review is very, very important, because until you actually rank the role of each of your stakeholders and their contribution, you'll not be able to tell what effect they are having on your event and how you should treat them. True or false?
True.
Good. So there are tools that can help you to identify various stakeholders. And when it comes to any event, you can have a wide array of stakeholders, both direct and indirect, including the client organizations, being the clients that you are organizing the event for. Another group of stakeholders too could be the local community. I think I've mentioned this in this class before. People always organize events and they forget the people in the community that they are organizing the event in.
Yeah.
Someone in your neighborhood organizes a party and they park their cars all the way down the road, and they even block your driveway to the point where you can't drive out of your own house because somebody is having an event. These are all members of the local community who have a stake in your event. You can also talk about government at various levels. You know that if you organize an event at a particular time of day and the noise you are making is too loud, certain governmental agencies can come and shut the event down. You know that?
Yes.
Good. If you are organizing an event and the police perceive that the event is causing too much commotion and it is becoming a security threat, they can shut down the event on that grounds. For the purposes of safety, you know that?
Yes.
Yes. If you're having an event in a location, fire service can come and say that based on the number of people that you have put in the room, which we will learn very soon as part of site management, you will learn that there are certain venues that cannot take beyond a certain capacity. Fire service can come and shut it down and say that based on the number of people that you have there, you are at risk of causing fire or stampede, so they are shutting down the event. So these are institutions at various levels who have a direct stake in your event, whether you like it or not. So you realize that for some events that you are even going to organize, you need to beforehand invite some of these agencies to come and take stock of your venue or to give you permission. For instance, if you want to organize a health walk, it's an event. You need to get permission from who?
Also, the police.
Police. Because they have to give you an escort and ensure that good and ensure that the roads are blocked so that you people can safely pass.
Madam, in this direction, it may be necessary to even contact the ambulance service.
Exactly.
Yes,
in case somebody
give
collapses.
You assistance.
Yes.
Yes.
Good, Kasim. Thank you for that contribution. So these are all agencies that have a direct stake, and you have to consider them. And they cannot be an afterthought, because for organizations like the police and the ambulance service, you need to give them time to plan and prepare. So you can't decide, I'm doing my event tomorrow. Today, I'm writing to police to come and give me escort. I'm writing to ambulance service to give me ambulance. It doesn't work that way. You have to plan ahead. That is why stakeholder reviews as part of event management is very, very important. You also need to think about your potential attendees and participants. What will their schedules be like? If you want to organize an event like Kidda Fest, which will run for 3 days for children, shouldn't you consider their calendar?
Yeah.
Good. Because children go to school. They have a school calendar year. But there are periods where children go on break. So if children are your target audience, you need to plan your event taking that into consideration, given that it's going to be a continuous event that is going to be held from morning to evening on each of the 3 days. So you need to also consider your potential attendees and participants. Even in pricing the event, you need to consider your participants. Is this something that my target participants can afford? Otherwise, if you just price it anyhow and they can't afford, what do you think will happen? They will not attend. Likewise, sponsors. Sponsors do not just give out money willy-nilly. You need to be able to convince them to sponsor the event. And even with that, there's a time frame that it will take before they can release the funds or the resources to you. And for some sponsors, before they release funds to you, they will have certain conditions that they want you to meet. So you need to take all these into consideration. Likewise, volunteers. You need to get enough people to commit to support you during the event. Otherwise, you will not be able to get enough hands to make sure that the event goes off successfully without a hitch. So because of these and other stakeholders, it is very important for you as an event manager to conduct a stakeholder review, right? And in doing this, you're basically asking yourself, okay, who are these stakeholders? What is the nature of their investment in the events that we are having? And beyond this event, are we looking at having a long-term or medium-term relationship with them? Because depending on the kind of relationship you want to have with them, it will determine your level of engagement with them and how much leeway you give them in terms of planning and organizing the event. So if you want to build a long-term relationship and their level of investment is high, you will always want to prioritize their ideas and their views. You always want to get their input so that they'll feel like they are a part of the process, because you don't want them to be left out, given that you want to build a long-term relationship with them and they are investing so much into your event. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
So the stakeholder review involves looking into all these things, including what they are investing, their level of influence, what kind of relationship you want to have with them beyond the event. All of these will determine how you deal with them throughout the process of planning the event and beyond. And to be able to properly do this stakeholder review, you need to create what we refer to as a stakeholder map. And this map could take the form of a simple list. Now, a simple list is just that, a list. It will not tell you the specifics of the information we are looking for, like their level of investment, their influence and power when it comes to the event. So the next way you can be able to incorporate these different elements is to create what we refer to as a grid, which includes a range of data like their level of investment and the kind of relationship you want to build with them. Others will go as far as creating a flow chart to be able to see the level of involvement of each stakeholder, at which levels they are involved, and the kind of relationship you want to have with them. And then the most common one is a 2x2 box diagram that captures the level of interest of each stakeholder and their level of influence and or engagement, right? So we will learn how to build this 2x2 box diagram, which will constitute part of an assignment you are going to receive at the end of this session. So this is what the 2x2 box diagram looks like. You can see that on the y-axis, we have what we refer to as what? The influence or power, right? Then on the x-axis, we have interest. Can we see that?
Yes.
Good. So at the level of low influence and low interest, we have the orange box. On the immediate right of that, we have the level of low influence and high interest. Then above that, we have the level of high influence and high interest. And then on the left of that, we have the level of high influence and low interest. Now, depending on where you position your stakeholder in this grid, you will have to relate with them in a particular way to achieve those objectives, right? So based on this grid, you have to treat your stakeholders in a particular way, depending on where they end up being positioned in this map, right? So a more detailed version of the map, including the various positioning of stakeholders, is presented below here, where we look at their level of power and interest and how it determines the treatment we give to them. So you realize that at the point where there's low interest and low power, we have what we will call low influence stakeholders. Do you realize that? Do you see that? Are you there?
Yes, please.
Good.
I just came in. I don't know whether it was mine or because I couldn't hear anything. I just came back.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So what I was saying was that, remember the grid we just looked at, this grid? It determines where we position our stakeholders.
Yes.
And based on where you position them,
okay.
And based on where you position them, you give them a particular kind of treatment. So if your stakeholder is positioned here, being the low interest, low power grade, it means that they have very limited influence on your event. Do you agree?
Yes.
So you can expend minimum effort in dealing with them. So you don't have to do much. You just have to monitor their behavior and their actions because they don't have any influence on you or your event.
Yes.
But when you move to the next level, you realize that they have a very high interest, but they have low power.
Yeah.
So they can't directly influence your event. However, they are very interested. So the best thing you can do is to what? Keep them what? Informed because they are very interested. They want to know. Now, above that, we have low interest and high power. They are not really interested in what you are doing that much, but they are very powerful when it comes to your event. So that means that you have to do what? Keep them satisfied. Otherwise, if they are unhappy, even though they have a low interest in your event, if they are unhappy, they can shut the whole event down. Do you realize that?
Yes, they can influence
so
the success.
Good. So you see that a lot of people, when they know they are going to organize events in their neighborhood that would attract the attention of the police, they'll go and visit the police and then they'll pack items from the party. They'll pack food, drinks, and they'll go and greet and say, oh, we are having this event. This is something small for you to keep you occupied and to... Have you seen that happen before?
Yes, inform you of what you'll be doing.
That, oh, we'll be having this event on this day. So if you hear any noise, oh, it is us. That is all in an attempt to keep them satisfied. Even though they are not very interested in your event, they have the power to shut it down.
Yeah.
So you have to keep them satisfied to prevent them from shutting your event down. Now, the extreme on the left side, on the right side of the high power, low interest group is the high power, high interest group. They are both very powerful when it comes to your event, and they are also very, very interested in your event. Meaning that you do not only have to keep them satisfied, you also have to keep them informed, and you also have to monitor them. So in fact, you are managing them very closely. Because in the event that you do not give them enough information and you do not keep them happy, it can have disastrous consequences for your event. True or false?
True.
Good. So how do you use this to manage your stakeholders? You build this grid, and knowing where each and every one of your stakeholders, depending on their level of power and interest, must be, you start to position them. So for instance, can you see that grid in front of us?
Yes.
You can see that the names of different people have been put in different boxes. Do you see that?
Yes.
Good. So we can see that in the low power, low interest box, we have two people there, Dora Brown and Mike Wilkins. Do you see that?
Yes.
So they are stakeholders of our event. They are not very interested in it. They have low power, but they are part of the event nonetheless. So we'll just monitor them. However, Jose and Maureen are very interested in the event, even though they have low power. So what do? We keep them what?
Informed.
That is why their names are in that box. Do you see that?
Yes.
Good. Now, for Mr. Pierce Marshall, he is very powerful when it comes to our event, but he is not very interested. So we keep him what? Satisfied. Now, what do we do with Janet, Michael, and Amanda?
We manage them.
Very interested and are very powerful.
We manage them closely.
Exactly.
Give them high attention.
Good. So by the time you finish creating this grid for all the stakeholders that you have outlined for your event, you will be able to know how to treat each and every one of them. And this can be shared with all the other event participants. So like Harriet, the funeral that you had, which involved a lot of high-profile government officials.
Yeah.
Good. If you had created this grid, where would you have put the president and the vice president?
They will be at the right side up. They are high in power, and then they were interested too.
Good.
They were so much interested in it. That's why they came.
Good. Who would you have put in the highly powerful but low interest box?
High powerful, low interest. That will be our directors.
Okay.
Yeah, they were going anywhere, but they were powerful in their company too.
Good. What about the high interest, low power?
The staff.
They want to know everything, right? But their power doesn't really
nowhere. Staff.
Yeah. And then the low interest, low power people. Where would you put?
That would be the community members, those such people.
Good. They have no power over the event, and they have no interest in it.
Interest.
Good.
Yes.
Class members, do you see what we just did?
Madam, it's really making sense.
Good.
Yes, I am. In fact, I am actually infusing it. My mind. I am infusing it to make a particular situation, which is matching.
We thank God.
Yeah.
You are getting value for money.
Yes, madam. Thank you. You are indeed an intellectual, madam.
Oh, thank you.
Kasim.
Right? So by the time you finish, you will know everybody's level of importance and how to treat them. So you will not forget anybody. And you can share it with all the other people involved in the event planning process. So that when they see this person on the day of the event, they know, hey, this person is managed closely. Hey, this person is keep satisfied. So everybody is on point because they know the agenda. They know who the stakeholders are. They know how to treat each of them. And they know how to act around them. Right?
Yes.
Good. So that is it
Madam,
for stakeholder.
Can we go over?
Yes.
You go over it once again.
Okay. So like we were saying, the high power, okay, let's start from the bottom. The low power, low interest people, they do not have enough power to influence your event. They are not necessarily interested in it. But nonetheless, your event is affecting them in some way, somehow. Like Harriet mentioned, the community members where they went to have that.
I wanted Harriet, yes.
Yes. So like Harriet said, the community members where they had that huge funeral in that town.
Yeah.
They were not powerful enough to affect the event directly. And they also didn't have any interest. But the event was being held in their community. So by that, they are stakeholders.
Yeah.
Good. So their actions can in some way, somehow affect the event. So you have to monitor them. The next group of people are those who have high interest but very low power when it comes to the event. And Harriet mentioned the ECG staff.
Yes.
They know there's a huge funeral going on. They all have to participate. But they do not have enough power to influence the outcome of the funeral.
Yes.
But they want to know what is going on.
So which box will they be in? The town where it was held will be the first box.
Yes, the monitor.
The one with the minimum.
Good. Then the ECG staff will be the
staff.
Keep informed.
Keep informed.
Yes.
Okay.
Because they have to attend the event.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But they do not have power to influence it.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Low power, high interest. Okay.
Good.
Yeah. I get
then
it.
The high power, low interest people are the ECG directors.
Yes.
They have high power.
They'll be kept satisfied.
Good.
Yeah.
And then the high power, high interest people are the government officials, including the president of Ghana who attended the event.
Okay,
yes.
I get it now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that wraps up our stakeholder review, right? And then the next thing we need to think about now is logistics. And here logistics refer to the practical considerations for the successful execution of the event. So we are looking at one, the size or scale of the event, because the sheer size and scale of the event will determine the kind of logistics that you have to put in place. The location will also determine the logistics that you need. If the location is somewhere close by to where the organization is situated, you will need a different set of logistics to get all the items you need to the venue. Whereas if it is far away from where your company operates, in this case, in the case of the funeral organized in Harriet's organization, it was in a whole other region and town. So the logistics will be different. The timing as well can determine the logistics. Timing in terms of seasons, timing in terms of work calendar, right? Timing in terms of the time of the year. And logistics could also be determined by the amount of preparation that is required for the event. So let's look at these one after the other. Now, the size or scale of an event could be impacted by stakeholder aspirations. In Harriet's case, Harriet told us that her boss told her the event is going to be for 5,000 people. So per their aspirations, they are designing an event for how many people?
5,000 people.
5,000. So they are aspiring to host 5,000 people for this particular event. Please, can we see the slide?
Yes, it's back now.
Great. All right. So their aspiration is to host 5,000 people. Now, you will bear with me that 750 people or 100 people or 1,000 people is not the same as 5,000 people, is it?
Not at all.
Good. So you realize that this particular event, based on the sheer scale and aspirations of the organizers, was not a local event. It was more of a national event. And if it had been another event like the CAN 2008 soccer tournament, it was more of an international event. So the scale of event will determine the level of ambitions and the level of profile raising that is required to meet those ambitions. The scale of the event too will determine your potential to attract appropriate audience numbers. For instance, if you are having a concert and you want to attract up to 1,000 participants, you cannot start promoting the concert in 1 week to the date of the event. Do you agree?
Yes.
Good. Because you need enough time to be able to advertise it to reach as many people as possible to guarantee your ticket sales of an audience of 1,000 members. Likewise, looking at the scale of the event, it will determine the kind of budget that has to be drawn. For most events, the budget is predetermined. So you know exactly how much you have to spend at the beginning. So if you notice that the scale of your event is exceeding your budget, what is the prudent thing to do?
You start
Cut down. You need to scale down to the budget you have. And this is where I love the caterers so much. They have a package for every budget. So the small chops, you can get 1 cake, 1 sausage roll for 10 cedis. 1 cake, 1 sausage roll, 1 meat pie or quiche for 15 cedis, because they understand the concept of size and scale and budget. So someone will have 1 budget and they will be serving maybe 50 people. And someone with the same budget may decide to try and stretch it to serve 75 people. Definitely it will affect the logistics, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well.
Good, because it's the same amount of money being spread over a wider surface area. The same will determine the technical capabilities obtainable for the event. If you are having an event that is supposed to include 1,000 participants in a huge event space, you need to be able to get logistics that will ensure that the sound in the venue will be equitably distributed. True or false?
True.
Good. If it is at a park and there are no washroom facilities, you need to be able to get porta potties that can serve all the 1,000 people. True or false? Good.
Yeah.
Good. These are all logistics and technical issues that come with the size and sheer scale of an event. Because if you are dealing with 200 or 300 people, 2 porta potties will not be enough. You may need more. And looking at the number of people, you may even need to hire attendants who will be seeing to it that they are neat at all times. These are all logistics based on size or scale of the event. Moving on to logistics in terms of location or venue. Like I mentioned earlier, depending on the number of people you are dealing with, you need to get a venue that will be appropriate enough to comfortably and safely host those people. So in the case of Harriet events, for instance, Harriet mentioned that because of the location that they were using, they even had to construct certain facilities. Harriet, you mentioned that, didn't you?
Yes, we constructed roads.
They had to construct.
And then some
Good. Because looking at the location, there were certain infrastructure and amenities that were not present to suit the nature of stakeholders of the event. So looking at the audiences, they had to put in additional infrastructure and amenities to make sure that everybody was happy. Logistics also feed into the nature of the dialogue with the venue and the level of priority they will afford your event. Because depending on the agreement you come to with the owners of the event space, there are certain priorities that you will be afforded and others that you will not. For instance, some people are able to negotiate with event locations such that in the event that there's an overflow, the event venue is ready to set up additional tables and chairs to accommodate the people. There are also instances where in case there's an overflow in a particular room, based on the negotiation and the dialogue and the relationship, the event venue is willing to give an additional room to house the additional guests that account for the overflow. Do you realize that?
Yes.
Yes.
So in thinking about the venue logistics, you need to ask yourself, the contacts at the venue, are they supportive? Are they flexible such that in the scenarios that I have given, in the event that you may need extra seating or an extra room, are they flexible enough to give that to you? Are they adaptive enough in case you need to change something at the last minute? Because there are some venues that in case you need to change something, you only have until 2 days to the event to do so. Or sometimes it's longer, 1 week. 1 week prior to the event, you can't change anything. But some venues are flexible, they are adaptive. If you want them to even add new things into the space, like for instance, install a Wi-Fi router so that people can browse for free when they come there. You want to add a photo booth at the last minute so that people can take pictures. These are all logistics you need to be able to consider regarding the venue, because anything can change. And when we go to site management, we will talk more about these location and venue issues and how to be able to deal with them, because they are a very pressing issue, which feeds into the logistics of event design.
So, Madam, please.
Yes, Kasi.
Hello. Yes, so I am asking whether in this case, it will be necessary to, considering logistics, whether it will be necessary to input safety measures and security measures.
All that. That's what I was saying, that when we get to site management, we will talk about all of these things. Security and safety, parking, even the positioning of items. We will learn about all these things under site management. Okay. Yes, please. Okay. So there are exciting times ahead, Kathy. All right. So still on the concept of logistics, we are also talking about considerations of timing. In Ghana here, I notice people organize events all year round, whether it's rainy season or they'll put a wedding there. They'll put a funeral there.
It's a client too.
Exactly. But ideally, when you're planning an event, you need to think very seriously about timing. So we can talk about timing in terms of the calendar year or the seasons. Other weather considerations you need to think about. In Ghana here, we either have the wet season or the dry season. And most of the time, it is more prudent to organize events during the dry season, than the wet season. Because the wet season comes with a lot of inconveniences, including perennial floods, right? Which can sometimes lock people out of their homes. So during that period, people would usually want to stay safe. So these considerations should be done when organizing events to be able to ensure that you do not put your audience and your participants at risk. There is also timeline that has to do with key dates and times during the year. Like for instance, people would usually shy away from organizing events that involve loud music during the ban on drumming and noise making period. So if you want to have your party and enjoy yourself and play music and dance from morning till evening, don't organize it when the Ghana people have imposed their ban on drumming and noise making. Do you agree?
Yes.
Because you will not be able to play any music.
That's true.
Yeah, and you risk violence at your event. I have heard of the Ghana people and their task force storming people's events and seizing their speakers and microphones and causing confusion at people's events.
So it boils down to the stakeholder management.
Exactly, Kasim. So if you do it properly, you will know that these stakeholders, they can be a problem for me. Good observation, Kasim. So you need to think about all these things and the timelines leading up to your event, such that it does not coincide with certain events that can affect yours. That's why I still don't agree with people who like to organize their weddings around Christmas time. Last year, I was invited to about 3 weddings spanning from 21st to 24th. 2 on the 22nd, I think, and 1 on 21st. I think there was 1 on 24th. Guess what I did?
What did you do, man?
I didn't attend any of them. It's Christmas time.
22nd. No, 21st, 22nd was Christmas.
21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Okay, they were 21st, 22nd, 24th. Look at the timing.
Hey, 21st. Yeah.
And around that time, there's a lot of traffic in town.
Oh,
and around that time too, if you are the woman in the house, you are preparing for the season. So you have to go to the market, all these things. And
you can even travel.
You can even travel. People travel around that time a lot.
Yes.
So by putting your event there, you're asking for trouble. It's either you will not get a number of people that you are looking for, or you will have a lot of unforeseen delays that will make the event difficult to pull off successfully. Right? Although technically, since it is your event, all the key stakeholders somehow will find a way to be there. I didn't attend, but the event went on because, as Kasim will say, per the stakeholder map, what's my position? Per the stakeholder map, I have what? Low influence.
Oh, yeah, and then low interest. So
low interest. So the event can go on without me. They don't really need to do anything about me. You see, but if it was the bride who didn't go, hey, high interest, high influence.
High power.
High power. Right? So it boils down to the stakeholders, right? But timeline is very, very important because timeline can either make or mar your event. There are certain people who I know planned outdoor events during the rainy season and they regret it. Others had contingency plans such that even though they were planning during the rainy season, they had an indoor venue that in case it started to rain, they would all run in and then continue the event. Right. So it all boils down to logistics and timing and making sure that whatever plans you have made, you have considered all the success factors, let's put it that way, and all the logistics that will affect your activities in that regard. So generally, for the purposes of planning, people to avoid forgetting the key elements of logistics will put together a detailed milestone chart, which will help them to be able to check the progress in terms of planning the event. So they will put together a list of priority events on the milestone chart and the dates and times by which these must be achieved. Others will also use what we refer to as a Gantt chart to be able to log all the key events and logistics that have to be in place and the particular periods of time that all these have to be put in place for the event to go off without a hitch. Now, these days, because of technology, hitherto it was being done manually, but now there are software that you just have to input all your logistics and it will generate the charts for you automatically with everything neatly arranged. So this is a typical example of a timeline with milestones. Can you see that? So
yeah,
the beginning is initiation, right? And it has a date attached to it. So between January 5th to March 1st is the initiation of the event, idea generation and brainstorming. So by 1st March, they would have finished the brainstorming and started the design process. However, you can see that the design process is supposed to end by what? March what? 14th.
14th.
Good. And then after that, the planning starts. So you can see there are specific tasks that have to be performed. And on top of the chart, you can see there are various milestones, right? So there's a milestone that must be achieved by March 7th, another one by March 14th, another one by June 29th, all the way to November 30th. So you can see that this event is being planned over the period of what? 1 year. Can you see that?
Yes, please.
Good. So it goes back to what I was telling you about planning of events. It is not an overnight affair. Because of the various moving parts and the different logistics involved, you may have to start planning way ahead of time to ensure that you have been able to consider and plan for every possible contingency. Otherwise, you will miss certain things that will affect the success of your event, and you will have no one to blame but yourself. So astute planning is very important. And these milestone charts and Gantt charts help you to organize your plans and all the activities you are undertaking into one place, such that you can be able to check them off as you achieve the various milestones and complete the different tasks until the D-Day that the event takes place. So that way, it is very unlikely that you will forget to do something because you have logged everything and you are ticking as you go along. Does that make sense?
Yes, please.
Awesome.
Yes, Doc.
So this is the milestone chart. And then this one is the Gantt chart. It's similar to the milestone chart, but this one arranges it in the form of a countdown. Can you see that? So as the days go by, it tells you the number of days that you have done and how many days you have to the actual event. And again, it also shows the milestones. Like I mentioned, there are various software that can help you to do this now. So you don't have to input this one after the other. When you get the software, you input the general activities or logistics, the time frames you want to complete them by, and the software will automatically generate the chart for you. And they generally come in the form of what we refer to as project management software, right? So this is a typical example of a Gantt chart for a particular event project that is being undertaken. All right. So once we are done with the logistics, we need to go to the most important part of the whole thing, being the financing. And here the key question you need to ask yourself is there enough money? Because you can have the most fantastic plan. You could have worked out all the logistics. You know all your stakeholders, those who will give you money, those who will not give you money, those who will give you non-financial resources. When you put everything together, you need to ask yourself, do you have enough to execute the event? And here, speaking particularly in terms of finances, you need to ask yourself, is the amount available, be it predetermined or not, enough to execute the entire event successfully? Because like we mentioned, sometimes before you start planning an event, the budget is already defined. So there's no wiggle room. Sometimes it is not predefined, but you have a range within which to work with. So you know what not to exceed based on the range that you have been given. So when the available amount is determined in advance, you need to create a budget statement detailing each task and activity and how much it is going to cost to ensure that you are spending within the confines of the budget that you have been given. So this budget will capture the key areas of expenditure in relation to the key income areas that you have. In this case, being the funding that you have been able to obtain for the event. And all these must be done in line with the creative theme that you have come up with, as well as with stakeholder expectations. Because remember, depending on the level of power and interest of the stakeholder, they may either have a high level of influence or a low level of influence. So you need to make sure that each stakeholder, depending on where they are positioned in the stakeholder map, is adequately catered for within the confines of the budget that you have been given. So if there are sufficient resources, then there are several options you need to explore, including if there are insufficient resources, then there are other options you need to explore, including perhaps seeking additional resources from the project commissioner. Sometimes you are given a budget and you are told that, okay, this is a starting point. So if you need any extra, it can be discussed. So in this regard, you can go and ask for additional resources with a justification for why you need them. But sometimes you bear with me that the budgets are fixed and there's no wiggle room. So in that case, whatever lofty plan you have had from the beginning, you may need to scale down to suit the budget that you have been given because there's no wiggle room. Perhaps the project commissioner may not be willing to give you additional resources, but you as the event organizer may be able to raise additional funds through sponsorship or fundraising. And this usually happens with corporate events. So for instance, ECG Ghana may be organizing an event to be able to sensitize the populace about energy conservation. And then Harriet realizes that they do not have enough money to fund the event, and her boss is not willing to release additional funds. So she can decide, okay, why don't we look for a sponsorship to help with the event? And in this case, there are so many organizations that can be willing to sponsor the event. Who can give me a typical example of an organization that can be willing to sponsor an event about energy conservation? Hello, Harriet.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Ministry of Energy.
Ministry of Energy. They may be willing to put in some money because it will help make their work easier.
Yes, and even a Ministry of Communication, Ministry of Finance, all the ministries will be willing. Almost all of them, finance, communication, information, and Energy Commission itself, and other IPPs, and then our stakeholders like interest in energy.
Yeah.
Energy issue.
Yeah. Bafo, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was talking about GMPC, Tallow Oil. They also do sponsor those events.
Good. What about private sector organizations? Private sector.
Private.
Like those who sell their appliances that show how much energy you are conserving.
Yes.
Hisense is one of them.
Hisense, yes.
LG Electronics.
LG, good. They sell the electronics that tell you 1 star, 2 star, depending on how much energy you are conserving, depending on the appliance. Good. These are all possible sources of funding. So you can raise funds from these sources in the event that your original budget is not enough and then the commissioner is not willing to deploy additional funds. And then the other option, like I said, if the budget is fixed, is to reduce your cost to be able to fit into the budget you have been given. So whatever lofty ideas you have, you may have to scale them down to fit the actual budget you have been given. And then ultimately, if there is no way of getting additional resources and working within the budget that you have been given, the ultimate decision you can take is to do what? Cancel the event or postpone pending when you get additional funds to execute it. So these are the options you have when it comes to the scenario of insufficient resources. And with that, we conclude with the session on finance. However, we also need to think about where the sum required is open to negotiation, like I mentioned earlier, or you now need to secure it. When it's open to negotiation, there's wiggle room. So you may not have to raise additional funds from other sources, or cancel or postpone the event, or force yourself to work within the budget that you have, right? You can be able to impress upon the commissioner to expand the budget to fit the plan that you have. However, some events are started without a single amount of funding. And as part of the planning process, you also need to think about how to raise funds to finance the event. Has any of you experienced that before? I believe not. This usually happens.
No.
Yeah, this usually happens when you are creating an original idea that you want to commercialize. And it often takes place in the private sector. So December to Remember, for instance, when they started it, I don't believe City had any idea where they were going to get money from to sponsor that event. But as part of the planning process, they also thought about sources of funding. And you realize that because they have to secure funding from external sources to finance the event, most of these events have multiple sponsors. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Yes. And these sponsors are often put in different categories. So they have diamond sponsors, gold sponsors, platinum, silver, depending on how much money they put into the event.
Yes.
Good. And depending on their level of influence and power, they get certain benefits. So for instance, depending on how much funds you contribute, City can decide to give you free adverts for a certain period of time. City can decide to put your logo on every brochure. City can decide to project your logo on the screen while the event is being recorded. These are all different perks and benefits that are given to sponsors for providing funding for these events. Also, in the events that you don't know exactly how much you will need, before you go in search of funding, you need to try as much as possible to get quotes from the various suppliers of the services and equipment for the event, so that when you go out, you know how much money to ask for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because sometimes without knowing how much you will actually need, you may go and look for sponsorship and you will ask for little. And knowing what I know about sponsorship organizations, even when you go and ask for something, sometimes they would want to cut it down and give you what they want to give you.
Yes.
So if you don't know how much you need, you will not be able to plan your sponsorship seeking activities to ensure that you raise enough funds across board to sponsor your event. So it is very important for you to understand how much your event is likely to cost when you are seeking to secure funds externally to fund your event, so that you do not go without having a figure in mind to put to your potential sponsors, which will ultimately also determine the kind of benefits that they can request based on how much funding they are putting in. So once we sort out the financing, we end up with a complete event concept, having gone through the idea generation process, the creative lens, the design lens, the stakeholder review, the logistics, and having the finances. Now we have come up with a complete event concept, ranging from the idea, the theme, the logistics of the event, the various stakeholders involved, and how we plan to fund the event. So the event concept now forms the basis of dialogue with your potential partners and collaborators, as well as other parties who are necessary for you to execute the delivery of the project. Because for a lot of sponsors who will fund an event, if you do not have an event concept to give them a snapshot of what the event is going to look like, there's no way you are going to get them interested in even having a conversation about financing or sponsoring the event. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, because they want to see something concrete, to know that what they are about to invest in is something that is viable. So the event concept ends up as the product that you obtain after you have gone through all these processes we have discussed in this session. right from determining the purpose of your event to identifying the success factors, coming up with the theme based on the testing of the concept among various stakeholders, and then coming up with your stakeholder map after you have done your stakeholder review, determining the logistics of your event, and then determining the sources of financing for the event. And together, it helps you to create your event concept, right? Isn't that a fantastic process?
Yeah.
Good. So based on this, you have your first assignment.
Yeah.
To create an event concept proposal.